The Grizzco Roller fills a void that is rather desperately needed in SalmonRun. It makes a roller actually feel fun to play, powerful to use, and doesn't make you feel like you bounce off of everything. Well, the last point is slightly wrong, but this weapon is so powerful that you'll accept the trade-off. The Grizzco Roller is a souped-up dynamo roller which allows you to exploit the usual limitations that the game imposes on you. So let's discuss how to get the most out of it in SalmonRun in Splatoon 3. Stats. The Grizzco Roller debuted in SalmonRun in Splatoon 3 in June 2024, making it the newest Grizzco weapon at the time of making this video. It is classified as a heavyweight weapon, being the only Grizzco weapon to be so. As a roller, it has 3 ways of inflicting damage: rolling, and then either horizontal or vertical flicks. They're all quite different from each other, so I'll discuss how they work separately. For horizontal flicks, its range is really short and only has a maximum damage of 150. It does have fall off, giving it a minimum of 50 damage. In practice, the horizontal flicks are very similar to the carbon roller, however the Grizzco Roller is faster, with it only taking 12 frames between flicks. Horizontal flicks use 5% of your ink tank, giving you around 20 on a full ink tank. Because of the poor range, you'll find that you won't use horizontal flicks for much. Probably the biggest exception is when you want to start rolling or if you need a quick escape. When rolling, the Grizzco Roller deals 400 damage to anything on contact. It doesn't have any ability to pierce or break through armor. You will bounce off of anything you cannot crush. At 400 damage, you crush or inflict damage on most enemies in SalmonRun, which makes rolling the preferred way to use this weapon. It is also the most ink efficient way too. Much like the other rollers, your ink usage is not as harsh when you're able to roll for prolonged lengths of time. With a Grizzco Roller, you can roll for around 17 seconds before you run out of ink, which is similar to every other roller in the game except for the Big Swig. Unlike all the other rollers, however, is the fact that the higher damage means you don't bounce off of absolutely everything, and you can easily crush enemies, which in turn means that you will get a lot of value out of rolling. In addition, when rolling, the paint output of the Grizzco Roller is really good, meaning that if all else fails, you always have the ability to paint for you and your teammates. The speed at which the Grizzco Roller rolls is also something that makes it stand out. It is probably the fastest weapon in the game in terms of pure movement. You can outrun practically everything. As a result, this can send you flying off of maps, or it can mean you actually miss your targets because you've moved too quick. As a heavyweight weapon, you won't move as fast when walking or swimming, so if you want to traverse a map quickly, then use the roll. For vertical flicks, the Grizzco Roller becomes slightly tricky to wield. At 600 damage, it does pack an insane punch, pretty much allowing you to one-shot a lot of enemies in SalmonRun. It has a minimum damage of 400, which is still substantial damage. Its range is also excellent. You really can hit things from an absurd distance, which gives you a lot of flexibility during a wave. You'll have the option to damage and weaken enemies from further away, which will benefit you sometimes, especially if you need to reduce the incoming pressure. However, the actual length of time it takes to use vertical flicks is what makes vertically flicking with a Grizzco Roller a bit tricky. It takes 72 frames, which is 1.2 seconds, to vertically flick. After doing this, there is then a 75 frame cooldown, which leaves you quite vulnerable. In practice, this can see you use between 2 to 3 seconds per vertical flick, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have multiple enemies trying to hit you, it could be the difference between being up and active or being splattered. Ideally, you need to make sure that you have space and safety when using the vertical flicks. Thankfully, you won't need them too much as the rolling takes care of most of the damage needs. However, when you do, make sure you don't get taken out too. Vertical flicks also use 20% of your ink tank, giving you only 5 of them on a full ink tank. I would avoid splat bombs with this weapon as it gets way more AoE value and damage from flicks and rolling. However, there are certain enemies that do require them. After you throw a bomb, you still have a decent amount of ink left in your tank to roll away and to crush further enemies. It's doable, but it's not something you want to do regularly, as the ink recovery on the Grizzco Roller is slower than you may realise. Boss slaying. The Grizzco Roller is an excellent boss slayer purely because it can crush enemies extremely quickly. For anything that can't be crushed, you may run into problems. Steelheads are a good example of this. You will need to vertically flick these for consistency. However, this makes you vulnerable and it can be tricky if you miss the timing. You will need some practice with this. The timing isn't like any other weapon. Given the range of the vertical flicks, you'll have a lot of leeway with attacking these, so you don't need to put yourself in direct harm to take them out. Consider using higher platforms or staying a bit further back. The minimum damage the vertical flick does is 400, so you will always one-shot them. Scrappers and drizzlers are annoying for the Grizzco Roller, not because they're dangerous, but because they force you to play with flicks or they make you bounce away if you're rolling. For drizzlers, you should shoot back torpedoes where possible, and this makes them really easy to defeat, but you can also place yourself in a position that makes you crush them when they're jumping from spot to spot. Drizzler landing points are set positions on each map, so once you know where they're going to jump next, you can put yourself in a position to use a flick and then wait to crush it as it lands. Scrappers will cause you to bounce, as it's likely quicker to roll against them than to flick. Horizontal flicks are fine here if you're up close to them, but rolling does deal more damage at a quicker rate. If your team isn't helping you around the basket and you're swarmed by scrappers, consider using a special, as this will speed up the process and ensure you don't get bounced into the water. For exposed, non-armoured enemies such as steel eels, slamming lids, flipper floppers, big shots, and even Moors, you can crush them almost instantaneously. The speed at which the Grizzco Roller can defeat these enemies is almost unmatched by any other weapon in the game, so should certainly be a focus when you get this weapon. I would forget about painting the circle for the flipper flopper or attempting to bomb a Moors. It is simply quicker to crush them as they pop up. If anything has more than 400 HP, you will find yourself bouncing off of them, but this doesn't always send you flying. There is a bit of a knack to it. You need to move in and up against the enemy, and this keeps you consistently applying damage with repeated hits. It's most noticeable against Moors, big shots, and floppers because at 1200 HP, you need to hit them 3 times to fully defeat it. It is definitely worth practicing this, as this makes such quick work of them. Stingers are easily taken care of, as they can be crushed with the roll, provided you get your angle right. It can be a little bit finicky, but as you don't bounce off of them, you shouldn't find yourself in too much danger. If all else fails, the horizontal flicks are fine, but you just have to do it 7 times. For this reason, rolling is usually the preferred strat. Flyfish and fish sticks are the 2 enemies that will give you trouble, especially if they spawn in large numbers around you. Thankfully, you do have the tools to escape easily from risk areas, but the way flyfish and fish sticks oppress you is via their ability to cause displacement and loss of turf, which can be detrimental to your teammates who may not be able to move around or paint as easily. Use specials if you have to. The Grizzco Roller can manage every other boss and every other enemy in the game without much issue, so you should consider utilising your specials for the bosses that you may struggle against. You can throw bombs fine, and you can use vertical flicks to take care of the fish sticks, but I really wouldn't waste too much time on doing these things. Any time not spent rolling is time spent not using the Grizzco Roller in its most effective form. I don't think there is any other weapon in the game that can manage lessers the way that the Grizzco Roller can. They are completely obliterated by this weapon. I'll discuss this more in the latter half of the video, but it is worth pointing out here that oftentimes the Grizzco Roller should be used for lesser management over everything else. A good example of this is for rush waves. The Grizzco Roller is the game giving you a free pass. Just simply crush everything in your path and keep an eye on your ink tank. For grillers, you may find it easier to just crush the small fry, but don't write off the Grizzco Roller for this round. Its vertical flicks stun the grillers in 1, and it is possible to apply crush damage to the grillers on some maps. You can be a very efficient griller slayer with this weapon, it just requires a little bit of practice. For Goldie seeking, this weapon is a machine at crushing the Goldie, and I truly mean that. It is likely the most high scoring wave type you could get for the Grizzco Roller. And also, isn't the sound of the golden eggs flying out of the Goldie just so satisfying to hear? For tornado and cannons, you should lean into the Grizzco Roller's ability to crush all lessers and run eggs. You are, without a doubt, the best weapon in the comp for this. For the rest of the night waves, you may need to utilise bomb and egg throwing at times. Just be mindful of the effects on your ink tank and keep an eye out on any lessers you can crush to help your teammates. For king waves, you might struggle. It actually depends on the map more than anything else. The kings are crushable when you can find the right spots. Much like the dynamo, you can wedge yourself in corners or up on high platforms and peel the king. As fun as it is to pull it off, it can be tricky due to the threats on the field, so only do this if you know you can pull it off. In most king waves, you will find a lot more value in supporting your team and managing the boss spawns. This allows them to throw all of their DPS into the kings with safety, and it allows you to have a consistent way to damage the kings, as flicking just isn't the most effective way to deal damage to enemies, and sometimes you just end up bouncing off the map. Weapon roll and rolling. Much like other Grizzco weapons, the Grizzco Roller is a straight up slayer, due in part to its over-tuned damage capabilities. It's a rare weapon, so the times you do get it, you want to abuse the overpoweredness of it. For this reason, you should play it with a slayer focus and concentrate on enemies you can crush. I'm sure it comes as no surprise to hear me say this, but if you get the Grizzco Roller, you gotta roll with it. I want to say in around 90% of situations, you will benefit from rolling rather than flicking. Flicking is extremely situational and often not the best way to inflict damage or use your ink. At 20% per vertical flick and 5% per horizontal flick, you don't have a continuous ink efficient way of damaging bosses. The flicks on rollers tend to run out faster than you may realise. In SalmonRun, you're almost always in some level of engagement with an enemy, often lessers, so you're constantly having to use your ink tank. With the way rollers work in SalmonRun, you'll often find that the damage you want to apply doesn't happen the way that you expect when flicking. You might miss the direct, you might get knocked back, you might run out of ink. SalmonRun really punishes rollers as a class, but this isn't to say that the Grizzco Roller isn't effective when flicking. It certainly is the best way to take out certain bosses such as steelheads. It's just that it's so much more effective when rolling in almost every single way. From its ink efficiency to its DPS to its ability to support a team, the Grizzco Roller should roll in almost every situation. Where this is most obvious is against lessers. At 400 HP, the Cohawk requires a lot of time, ink, and attention. When they spawn in large numbers, they can block paths, interrupt your decision to take down boss salmonids, and most importantly, they can take quite a lot of your time to defeat. With a lot of weapons, they require high ink usage, bombs, and teamwork. Add in the small fry at your ankles, the chums circling around you, and there's a high chance you might take slightly too much damage and wind up getting splattered. The Grizzco Roller is practically immune to lessers. It is so effective and so efficient with damaging lessers that this should more or less be your main focus every single time you get given this weapon. Lessers are time wasters essentially. They don't offer anything of value to the main objective in SalmonRun, but they have a high likelihood of causing problems for you and your team. There needs to be a balance between taking care of them, but also recognizing that there are more important tasks to undertake, such as defeating bosses and depositing the golden eggs. With a Grizzco Roller, you don't even need to think about anything I've just said, because this weapon simply allows you to bypass the usual restrictions that lessers impose on you. You know, in my other videos where I've spoken about how the Grizzco Splatana and the Grizzco Slusher can break the game because of their ability to pierce armor, and this allows you to bypass usual restrictions of boss cycles? Well, the Grizzco Roller breaks the game with its ability to completely dominate lessers. There is simply no other weapon better suited for this role, and I think it's a shame if you get given this and choose to not fully immerse yourself in the role of a lesser slayer. When there are no lessers around you to waste your time, you are, to put it quite simply, free to do whatever the hell you can to reach quota. Every action you take in game needs to be weighed up with the thought of consequence against the timer and the outstanding quota. Without lessers griefing you at every moment, you can prioritize defeating bosses and depositing golden eggs. This, in of itself, is a game-breaking ability. Tornado Wave is actually a perfect example of what I'm trying to say here, because once the lessers are dealt with, you are then safe to deposit the eggs. It's the same in every wave with the Grizzco Roller. Add in the fact that most bosses on the field can be crushed, you then end up with a game-breaking weapon that allows you a free pass to win the wave, or the ability to deposit far more eggs than you would have ever thought possible. Don't take this weapon for granted when you get given it. Sure, it's nice to get those bosses with the pretty flicks, and it's fun to try and run around the map as fast as you can, but it really does shine when you focus on supporting your team with lesser management. Even if you find yourself doing other tasks, such as boss slaying or egg running, you have to always be thinking about how you can crush as many lessers as possible. I hope this video helps you appreciate the Grizzco Roller a little bit more. I'll see you guys soon.